Hey, it's Jessica Honegger, founder of the socially conscious fashion brand Noonday Collection. Welcome to the Going Scared podcast. Welcome back to the Going Scared podcast. Today's episode is really in response to you guys because I heard from so many of you when I was starting off just 3 short months ago, by the way, to please include stories of the messy middle. Often podcasts are people who have made it, or they have a name, or they're somewhat familiar to you. And you asked me to please include people in the messy middle. While Allison is certainly well known, but from her own brand called the Alison Show, she makes her living blogging, teaching online courses, posting on socials, speaking at events, and podcasting. You probably know her from the lifestyle brand and website called the Alison Show. She is in a messy middle right now. She recently was hit tragically by a car. And I have seen her response to this with such courage and resilience. I think that when you are intentional about walking in courage, about creating a brand and a business, which she really decided to scale this past year, and then she got completely set back, it would be easy to push a pause button for a really long time. This podcast really is all about going scared right in the middle of difficulty and rising up to embrace possibility even when it's hard to see. Hey, Allison, welcome to the Going Scared podcast.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. It's like when you said going scared, I got a little scared.
That's because you don't have a podcast, but you primarily are solo. You don't really do a whole lot of interviews. So maybe you're a little scared right now.
I don't know. I think I'm excited. I'm very excited.
That's right. I've learned that recently a couple weeks ago. It was like, let's reframe anxious and say we are excited.
Yes, it's because that's what I've learned too, is it's the same emotion. And so you get the choice of framing it. And I can't remember if I read it somewhere where it's kids who before they took a test said, I'm excited, and use their nervous energy. Did you read that?
I heard this. Yes, that's exactly where this came from.
I think it's Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. Have you read that book?
Yes, I think that's where it came from.
We love Mel. We both love Mel. We love you, Mel.
Yeah. Okay, but tell us what it is, because it was such a cool idea.
Okay, so the idea is just that excitement and like anxiousness, they're the same emotion. Like your body is going through the same sensations, right? So like I just said, I was super excited to talk to you, and then I think it's the power of suggestion. You said scared, and I'm like, oh wait, am I scared or am I excited? I don't even know anymore. And so really I do this. This is like embarrassing, but not embarrassing. Before I speak, after I learned this, before I speak, when I have that excited energy, I say, I'm excited. And you have to say it out loud. So you feel like Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live talking to yourself in the mirror, but I'm excited. And students who did that performed better on test. So it's science.
Isn't that crazy?
It's science.
I know. I love it. I love all the science that's coming out, because it's like some of this stuff, like, I don't know, maybe when Oprah was talking about it like 30 years ago.
Yeah, I'm going to fold my arms. Science.
Yes. Okay, this is a perfect setup, though, because, Allison, you've created a lifestyle brand around this notion of encouraging women to be themselves confidently and without apology. And I want to hear your journey on how you've embraced that for yourself, because oftentimes we aren't able to give that to others until we discover it for ourselves. So tell me about that journey.
Well, first of all, you literally so perfectly said what I do better than I can say it. So I'm going to need to write that down. That's literally the best elevator pitch for my brand and business I've ever heard.
I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I appreciate it because I'm a copywriter. So I feel like I'm pretty good, but you just nailed it. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So yes, I believe that in business and in life that honestly, usually the thing we need the most for ourselves turns into the thing that we are able to give to other people. And so what I mean by that is I feel like deep down, and I'm only realizing this like 10 years into my business, okay? I'm actually more like 12 years in. I've been doing this for a while.
This is awesome.
And as I started a blog over 10 years ago, I started trying all these different things that I wanted to try. I wanted to be an event planner. So I did events, and I wanted to be a craft empire. So I sold things on Etsy and taught craft tutorials. And over the past 10 years, what I realized I love doing more than anything else is sharing the message. And this is what I say at the end of my podcast every single time is only you can be you, and you are already as awesome as you need to be. And then I cry privately in my corner because that's what I needed to hear, and it's what I needed to discover for myself. And honestly, because it took me 10 years to figure it out, because I struggled and suffered with it more than I think other people have to or need to. We all have a different journey, which whenever we say journey, our podcast is called Awesome with Allison, and I do it with my husband. And whenever we use the word journey, I make him like do like a finger symbol, like ding, like, and I'd say last year, 2017, is when I really got things in order for me. And that's when I was like, no more doing what I think I have to do because people want it of me. No more doing what I think I have to do because that's all that, I'm good at. I had been throwing these huge all-female dance parties, 700-person dance parties, and the tickets would sell out in under 5 minutes. And the demand for them was so high. I had sponsors coming to me, venues coming to me, and I love doing it. I love doing it so much, but it was draining me. It was wrecking me. And in the back of my mind and in my heart, I wanted to start a podcast. And I kept being like, man, all I do is talk. No, like, shut up, Allison, shut up. Why do you want to start a podcast?
When it was like calling to you, it's like you are a talker, so why not use that for good?
Yes. And
instead of telling yourself to be smaller.
Yes. And so 2 things on that. One, oh my gosh, full circle, going scared.
Right. Okay, I was going to wait to get into this, but I just can't help but notice that you feel like you came into sort of acknowledging your own power and starting to own the things that you actually wanted to do, not the things that were like maybe you felt pushed into or whatever.
I've been telling that story, like everybody wanted the dance parties, so I was doing the dance parties. That's not true.
Right. You're not a victim to your own success.
Yeah, I'm not a victim. And honestly, I'm not an idiot either. And sometimes when I tell my story, I'm like, what an idiot I was. And I'm like, I wasn't an idiot. I think I knew that the parties would be successful, so I wasn't scared to do them. Right. They drained me. They weren't exactly the exact thing. They were keeping me from doing the other things. And so the reason why I felt important enough to interrupt, and I apologize again, but because I think lots of times, I knew that I was going to be very successful doing that. And it's difficult when you're being successful in a certain area to let go of it for uncertainty and going scared, right?
Okay, so let's pause really quick, because will you catch the listeners up on your dance parties? Because not everyone may not know about this.
Yes. Okay. So, hi, I'm Allison of the Alison Show. I gave myself my own show. And what started happening is I was blogging about different things. At my core, I am a writer. And then social media happened and this little thing called Instagram. And I had been building an online audience, not huge by any means, but I had been building an audience for some time on my blog. And then I hopped on Instagram and realized that I resonated even better on Instagram than I did on my blog. I was growing faster, getting more traffic. And so that helped me kind of realize where my superpower was which again, it wasn't being me. I wanted it to be about the events I threw, about the crafts. But what people really connected to was me. And at the end of the day, I'm okay with that. Again, I'm not a victim. I wanted people to recognize me as a creative genius. But they were like, no, we like the crazy girl crying under her desk with a constant stream of Diet Coke. And at the time, that's really what I was. And I was like totally down to share that, you know?
Right.
And so Instagram got video, and like any regular natural person would do, I turned on Robin Thicke's blurred lines. I was like, I'm gonna like show you my really sweet dance moves. And P.S. by the way, like that first video I think was after my second baby, and I was like a good 40, 50 pounds up. Right. And so, yeah, because, you know, does anyone gain less than 60 pounds with each child?
Why do they still say don't gain more than 30 pounds? Like, it just sets all of us up for failure.
Mean. It's literally so mean. They used to have to take my blood pressure after they weighed me because I would be so stressed out about my weight gain.
It's real.
Like, this is so ridiculous, you know? So anyway, I'm a good, 30, 40 pounds up, and I just start dancing. And then meanwhile, I'm doing all these events, and, not to oversimplify, but I was doing events for Microsoft, and I'm good friends with Susan Peterson of Freshly Picked. And I said, hey, I used to throw dance parties in college. Let me throw you a dance party. Because when I was doing these events, I thought everyone was going to tell me what a creative genius I was, but all they were saying is, hey, we want to dance with you. We want to dance with you. And I was like, well, I want to dance with me too. And
I make myself an awesome dance partner.
Yeah. I'm like, the thing is I'm so happy dancing by myself. I was genuinely shocked that people were like, hey, we want to dance with you. I was like, no, you want to tell me how beautiful this party is, right? And they're like, no, it's cute, but no. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was a really big adjustment, right? Recognizing the thing that I wanted wasn't necessarily working out, but then asking myself, is that truly the thing I wanted? Is that truly what I wanted to have happen? And we don't recognize the things that are going well. And what was going well is that I had built such a strong brand that connected with people that I could physically get them off of the internet and into a party, which is not easy to do, right? And so I started doing these. First, I did it for other people, which is very often in business. You have to do it for someone else because they have the money. And then I started doing these all-female dance parties for myself. And I live in Provo, Utah, so we don't have a big alcohol situation here in Provo. So these dance parties are sober. So when I say I'm getting 700 women to dance, and we're not standing around just taking pictures, we are dancing. They are, for the most part, I know some have a little fun before they come, but they're, for the most part, I'd say 98% sober women, all female. The only men I let in the parties are men who are working the event, my gorgeous photographer, Trevor Christensen, who's the best. And so I hire my little brother and his friends. They're like in their 20s, and we call them the man candy. And they take your cell phone to take pictures of you. They take your napkin. Awesome. They literally just like serve you the entire time. So then, of course, the dance parties keep getting bigger and bigger. I add a stage, I add dancing sharks, I add wardrobe, I add costume changes. So, that's what the dance parties are.
Okay. And are you still doing them at all? Or you're saying you shut that down because
I needed to grow a business. I needed a business. I wanted a business. And events, they're a very difficult business model to scale. And I wasn't interested in franchising the parties, which lots of people asked if they could. But I knew the formula for the event. And again, that's not what I was interested in doing. And so I needed to shut the parties down for a while so that I could have a business. And what I mean by business is I mean scalable organization. Mm-hmm. I needed to be able to take myself out of certain parts of the business. I needed to have things defined and written down. And parties and events, and you know this because you do them, they're like a drug. Because there's that deadline, there's that rush. And I honestly have just started to realize, like, I've lived a good portion of my life fueled just on adrenaline. in that anxious, gnawing state where you're revving that train and the train is going and, it's building up all this steam towards the event. And, the fun thing about doing an event is you're so important and everything you're doing is urgent and it's so important and everyone better help me out because I might freak out, and then you have the event and then for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'd crash and everyone would know, don't call Allison, don't talk to Allison. And people after the party would be like, when's the next party? And I feel like I'm like, in a corner gnawing on scraps, like turning around going, how dare you ask me? Like,
I'm a victim to my own success. The party was incredible. Don't you feel sorry for me?
Yeah, no, like literally though, the party would be an incredible success. And I'd be like, one person may have said like, I didn't get my free piece of swag. And I'd be in the corner like a wrecked mess. Like I cannot control the feelings of 700 women. I have failed. So yeah, I feel like people might think I'm a little insane, which I am, but that's the parties. I would make money, but I couldn't scale a business. And they were taking up so much time and they were so urgent. And so last year I took a step back and I started doing the things I wanted to do. And I started the podcast. I started a Year of Awesome newsletter, which I turned into a paid program this year, which literally is the most fun thing in the entire world because it's a group of people who are just encouraging each other in working on like awesome attributes. Like one of them is courage, right? And so there's that. And then I have my branding workshops. And so like last year I launched Allison's Brand School because when I got quiet and I asked myself, what's the most value that I feel like I have to offer right now? This random answer came to me and it was like, this guy driving by in a car. And I was like, if he had something, a message that he needed to get out, I could tell him how to do it. And so I started a workshop and I scaled it last year. And then I launched Allison's Brand School. Now it has its own website. And just last week, we decided to give it its own Instagram account. And then the Alison Show has the podcast, the Year of Awesome calendar. It has these gratitude practices. It has the content I put out on Instagram. And there's other things I'll be developing for the Alison Show. And I'm sure that it's so funny because it's like when you talk, you're like, I do this and I do this, but I can't remember what else I do, right? Oh, I was just going to say, I hired my first full-time employee. I'm in the position to be able to hire another full-time employee. I launched some audio courses. I was able to monetize. It took me the year, but every single way that I was making money in 2016, I stopped. And for the first good part of 2017, I really was not making any money, but I was able to, in the end, triple my profits from year to year by getting the structure in place. Yeah. Yes. And so now I'm on, and again, I'm not saying everyone needs to make more money or hire more people, but I realized I genuinely wanted to build my empire. That's what I wanted to do.
Yes. Okay. So you get everything in gear. You take that risk of shutting something down that was successful. You hire someone, which is huge. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then you get hit by a car. I mean, seriously.
Okay, let's put this into context. First off, when you say you get hit by a car, it sounds like a metaphor, right?
No, yeah. Like you literally got hit by a car doing what you love. Like out in the morning, doing your jam, doing your running and your dancing. And I saw, I found out through Instagram, of course, but something just really moved me. And I think it's because I met you around a year ago.
Yeah.
And at, Rachel Hollis's Rise conference, which I just loved getting to be in your presence. And
it was so fun.
You were moving in this direction of, you were embracing health and wellness and like all of this stuff. And then boom, you are literally, I
got taken out, man.
You got taken out.
Taken out.
I know. So that's what is and that's really why I wanted to have you on the show, because it's one thing to hear about what someone is doing and cheer them on. But you're like, you could just, this is a great moment to be completely derailed and throw in the towel and say, like, forget this. So I just want to hear a little bit about, because that's not the sentiment that I'm getting as I follow you. I'm seeing you practice resilience. I know it's
Thank
not all
you.
unicorn.
Oh, heck no.
But you are making some choices to have a mindset in the middle of a lot of pain, and physical pain is when your body's taken out. I mean, that can just be a domino for so many other things. So let's walk us through, you know, like, well, first tell us, like, you did literally get hit by a car and the ramifications of that, and then how you were choosing to rise up.
Yeah. So on December 20th, and just again, to put this into context, that day I had a meeting I landed my biggest client, my biggest project, a 10-month consulting job. And I'm doing corporate branding for them, and then also taking my branding workshop to their consultants. And so this is like this dream for me, because it's steady. I know I'm going to make X amount of dollars, which I never have, which also I don't necessarily like. It's not that I want that, but it gave me the ability to say, I can hire this person who I've been waiting to hire for a year. You know, so she was supposed to start on, she did. She was going to start on January 1st. I had a meeting that afternoon, my first meeting with them, you know, and the entire year had been sending out my Year of Awesome as a free download through my newsletter. So I had literally been priming a product for a full year, and I was working on getting it ready to sell, which it's a calendar. It's a Year of Awesome. I had to sell it in the beginning of January. Right. So that's where we are. What I can, especially now, months later, look back and see is I was in the best possible place emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually I've ever been in my life. And so when that hit came, I survived. So I'll give you like the highlight reel, but I actually recorded a podcast episode 3 weeks after I had been hit, and I didn't end up airing it because I realized it was too vulnerable and too raw for me to share at that point. But we did air it later. So that's episodes number 40 and 41 of my Awesome with Allison podcast. But what happened is I was running, the driver was coming down. She wasn't an idiot. She wasn't doing anything that any of us don't do every single day. She was looking for the oncoming traffic coming in a different direction. She lived up the hill. And so, you know, you go into autopilot. Go like, sometimes you can get to work and you're like, I don't remember driving here because I was thinking about this and I was doing this. And so she wasn't texting. And that's the other thing. It was so funny when I got hit, everyone's like, wants to villainize, like, was she texting? And I'm like, no, but I know the rest of us are. So let's put our phones down. Okay. Like, and so, she just came around the corner, and even though I was looking forward, I'm a very cautious runner, and I was on the side of the road I was supposed to be on. I was doing everything I was quote unquote supposed to do. The car came around and just took me out. And so I broke 2 ribs and a vertebrae, and I had to be taken by ambulance. And the thing with ribs is they basically, and then I cracked my head open and I had to get 5 stitches. And so, it's a thing. So, so I also, like, I laugh when I say I got hit by a car, but it's the shock, right? It's the shock factor. I don't want anyone to think I don't take it seriously. And I talk about that in my podcast, but I do take it very seriously. It's just, that's the way I cope with like a shock for myself. It's a straight up miracle that it wasn't worse than it was. But again, that's not to diminish what it is. And I think even now, we're almost 3-4 months out, and I'm back to quote unquote doing my work, and I don't hide it, but it's like people just don't get the full picture. Like you said, like, I'm still in pain all day, every day. I taught my first workshop after being hit, and I was terrified that I wouldn't be able to remember the content because I have a head trauma. Mm-hmm. And it's a 10-hour workshop, and I taught it 8 times last year and mastered it. And then I had to stand up I just do these things, Jessica, right? Where I'm like, I was hit by a car. I'm feeling better. Let's double the number of tickets I've ever sold and not realize I'm trying to sell them in 1/3 the amount of time I sold my last workshop in. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Right. I can relate. So I'm an adrenaline junkie who always wants things bigger, better, and more the next time. So I get it.
In an effort to practice what I preach, like, had to accept that help, you know? And he said, there's 2 types of trauma. There's a big T, like being assaulted, being hit by a car, right? Like these things that we think are trauma. And then there's the little T's. And they can be a mean comment. They can be something someone said to us when we're a kid that we don't realize we're carrying around as a belief and a truth. You know, and I really, truly have this amazing ability to minimize any trauma that happens to me, even being hit by a car. I'm like, well, I wasn't assaulted. I'm not dead. I'm not paralyzed. And he's like, you were hit by a car.
Wow.
And for me, it's kind of this like, yeah, do I have to be like how badly would it have to be for me to accept help? How bad would I have to get hurt? How traumatic would it need to be? And I think that's something, if you maybe have the tendency like I do to minimize anything going on, to ask yourself, okay, well, how bad does it have to be? Because man, I don't want to be around when that happens, you know, and to not be afraid of being hit by a car like this girl, like, I don't want to be hit by a car. It's like, remember how I said, like, I was literally in the best place to receive this lesson, whether or not like it needed to happen or it had to happen. I the way that I operate is by faith. And I sincerely believe like that this was just part of my story. But it doesn't define me. Right. I'm not the girl who got hit by a car. No, I'm not the girl who got hit by a car. Did I get hit by a car? Yeah, sure, it happened. But I'm not the girl who got hit by a car. I'm just friggin' Allison. I'm already as awesome as I need to be, right? Mm-hmm. And so I guess I would say I don't like to scare people when I'm like, you're going to get hit by a car or you've already been hit by a car, you know? Like, I'm
but
like,
it's interesting. Yeah. I think that people, I mean, we all have a hard time entering into suffering. And none of us really wants to call that into our lives. The irony is that the very thing that you're saying is that you are glad. I mean, ultimately, I think you've even said this, that you are glad you got hit by a car. Yeah. And you're on the other side of it. You're on the other side. I think we're afraid that we aren't gonna make it through the wilderness. Yeah. But in fact, we do. I mean, you make it through. And I think that's why I wanted to have you on, because you're still in the middle of pain and you're having to pick up the pieces of having to have kind of put everything on hold for a bit. Yeah. And you're picking it back up again, but you're having to do it in a new way and adapt to what your body can actually handle now. And you're doing it, you know?
Thank you. And I just want to say, it doesn't always feel like I am. Like, you're saying that to me and I am aware of what you're saying, but am I accepting it? Do you see what I'm saying?
Because now you're comparing yourself no longer to the suffering or the abuse of Allison. Now you're comparing yourself to the badass Allison that was ready to rock it.
Yep. You know? And that's what I keep saying is I'll have this thought where, why didn't we get this done? Why isn't this thing organized? Like, why didn't this get done? And I will legitimately forget. Remember when you got hit by a car and you were in bed for 2 months and you didn't have the mental capacity? People are like, oh, well, you're in bed. You can write your book and you can do this. No, No, when you have pain, especially pain that is so close to your head, I couldn't concentrate. And that's literally my life is concentrating, writing an Instagram post, speaking, giving a lecture, putting together a podcast. My work is thinking and writing and concentrating. And I couldn't concentrate for months. So my only option was to relax. My only option was to ease into the suffering, to accept it, right? And I asked my doctor, I was like, I forget things. And
He's like, I was like, you got hit by a car.
Yeah. And again, that's an interest. I'm like, is it that I'm forgetting facts? Is it this? Is it that? And he's like, you have like head trauma, both physically and emotionally, and that will happen for maybe even up to a year. But I also think it's honestly just a habit of not cutting ourselves slack. Or again, I'm not a person who likes to victimize myself or have excuses. And so I've been really hard on myself the last month. We did a few podcast episodes and I was like, the podcast is back. And then we haven't done the podcast in a few weeks, a month maybe. And I'm like, man, I really got to get back to the podcast. And I'm like, well, I'm running a team. I got the workshops going. I have my paid programs going. Maybe I just don't have the capacity for the podcast this week. Maybe in a couple more weeks I will, and just giving myself that. My dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer, 10 months or so before I was hit by the car. And to be in that place of complete and utter just pain and heartbreak and sadness. And then to be able to turn around for 15 seconds and in a totally genuine, authentic place, dance like an idiot on my Instagram stories. And I had this fight within myself. Am I being inauthentic? And it's no, because pain and beauty can coexist. And that actually, I believe, is the human experience. That pain and beauty coexist, and we have the capacity to hold it. We have the capacity to appreciate the pain and the beauty. And man, we don't just want only beauty, because then we can't appreciate it. And that's what I try to tell myself, like right this second talking to you, I'm in pain. I hurt. My neck hurts. My back hurts. It hurts. And I'm on a muscle relaxer and ibuprofen. And I'm in pain. And for me, I try to use that pain, that physical pain, as a reminder to go through my body and release the tension, to be mindful, to be present. And just yesterday, I had a doctor's appointment. And after my doctor's appointments, I get a little down because it's just a reminder that this thing is real and it happened, And I'm usually grateful, but I wasn't yesterday,
Right.
And, but then I had this funny thought. Remember when I was in bed and I was just in bed? That was kind of nice, And I was like, but when I was in right now, and it's after you have a baby and all you want is to not be in pain and to be up and appreciating. But then you look back and you're like, remember when I get really bad postpartum anxiety. And it's like, remember when I was that wreck of an anxious person holding a baby, praying every minute of the day? Like I didn't have the strength to carry on my own. That was awesome because I had so much faith in that moment.
Thank you for that. I want to go back a little bit. I'm sure that a lot of your clientele then that you are speaking to is coming from a direct sales background. So so these workshops that you do, are you helping reps, sales reps kind of know how to like come up with their own personal brands? And what are a couple of the tips that you give in our workshops that are helpful for those people listening right now?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking that, because I would love to share that. So, first to say, brand is a slippery word. And when we say branding, some people might think of a logo or their website, right? They might think of the physicalities of branding. For me, those are really identity. Like if you're going to have, like, that's like what a graphic designer does, what I talk about when I'm speaking about branding is I define it as the personification of a company. And marketing is more like the science. Marketing is more like the math. Marketing is the who you are talking to. The branding is who is doing the talking. So I just want to lay out the definition so we're on the same page there. And so Noonday has a brand. It does have an effective brand because you can get people to events. You could tomorrow decide to change verticals and sell a completely different product, and I bet you would still be very successful because the brand would carry through. If you're still meeting the tenets of your brand, and what would you say are some of the markers of the Noonday brand?
I would say connection, positivity,
yes,
impact.
Yes. Okay, so those are all phenomenal because they're basic human needs. Connection is a basic human need. And I believe that, Jessica, you as the creative visionary and founder of that brand, connection is something that drives and motivates you. And that is why when you infuse it into Noonday, it is authentic. So at my workshops, that is literally what I do, is I help people, because you can be like, oh, I like this. I need to make money, so I started it. Or I need to do this. Or I needed friends, so I started it. And I'm like, but what is that deeper reason? So I trick everyone. I'm like, it's a business workshop. And then people are like crying and they're like telling me their thing. And I'm like, listen, this is actually what I was going to do. They're like, why am I crying? And I'm like, because in order to create something real, you need to start with something real. And so that's why it's a direct sales company that I'm working with. I'm taking my workshop to their consultants as part of the contract that I'm doing. But at my workshops that I host, which are all in Utah, so people say, can you bring it here? Can you bring it here? Well, if you have a group of 100 people and you're going to hire me and pay me for that, yes, I can bring it there. But for the most part, for the individual, I keep it in Utah because that's where my team is the strongest. That's where my resources are the strongest. And also, I like to say I'm like Celine Dion in Vegas. Like, you got to come to me. In order to create something real, you need to start with something real. And so what I did is I put too much of myself in my brand. And that's why it caused me too much suffering. It was too personal. And I think lots of times, that is the default for people who I think are listening to this podcast. They're making it too personal. And what I needed to do is I needed to have the brand in all its different parts defined, because then it makes it less personal. But I always say definitions equal freedom. But more than that, it's that correct definitions equal freedom, because you can have a whole bunch of definitions like, I do this, I serve people this way, I believe this, when I speak to people, I use this tone and this voice and I connect in this way. I often ask people, if your brand was a person, would it give them a warm hug that is just a little too long that somebody's uncomfortable? Would it give them a head nod? Would it give them a high five? Would it give them a fist bump? You need to think about how your brand communicates with people. And the number one thing that most people do is they get so excited about the product or the service that they're only ever selling the features, the product or the services. So a less educated person in branding, like I said to you, Jessica, I said, what are the tenets of your brand, or what's your brand? You would say, oh, well, this is the product that we sell. These are our, right?
Right.
And that's where a lot of people are, even people who are at a higher level, they're coming up with things that they think should be their message based on what other successful people are doing, or based on what they think their clients want. And I got this question the other day when we were doing a live. And this is why I also do lives. do Instagram and Facebook lives, because these questions that I'm getting, man, these are good questions. And now I have this good information to share on this podcast, right? And somebody said, how do I find my ideal client or my ideal customer? And I didn't get to it in the live, but I've been thinking about that. And I'm like, I don't find my ideal client. I've never once in my life found my ideal client. I attract my ideal client. I share what I believe. I share information that I think will benefit people. I share value, and I attract people who want to do business with me. And then I have a better rate of success, because people who can hold the thought that I air hump on my Instagram, but then I also genuinely am pretty bad at business advice in this particular realm, if they can make peace with that fact, then they're someone I want to do business with, right?
Right. Like you mean that, like, you're like the goofy side of you, the rainbows and unicorns, but also knowing that you are a smart, strategic person, like someone who can reconcile those two things.
Yeah.
And say, yeah.
Yeah. And I think what can happen is we feel the need to okay, my ideal client is this person, so I'm going to behave the way this person wants. I'm going to create material that this person wants. And what I teach in my branding workshop is that's the desperate girl in high school who's doing her hair, her makeup, wearing her clothes the way that every boy wants her to. And maybe we were that desperate girl in high school, or we know that girl in high school, or we're right. And that does not a happy business make. You get burnout. And you know what? There's a lot of ways to build a successful business. What I teach is, do you want to build something that you're fulfilled by, that is authentic, and that is hands down freaking engaging? Because that's what I'm the best at. I'm not Jeff Bezos, right? I'm not creating a tech company maybe one day I will be Jeff Bezos, but right? Like, what my expertise, what my knowledge is in engaging and connection and things that fulfill you while you do them, because I literally could die tomorrow, and that's okay. I mean, it's sad for my family, and I'm not saying I want to die tomorrow. I'm not trying to attract that. I'm just saying I'm living my life in a way where I feel fine. And I think that's huge.
Right. Well, it really goes back to the beginning, which is that your brand is about encouraging women to be themselves confidently and without apology. And you need to also approach your brand in that same way. And I just love that picture of the girl in high school. Or I actually had a friend tell me last weekend, she has a couple teenagers and a couple preteens. And she's like, I always know which of my kids has that like confidence thing, because it's the one who's not dressing like everyone else. And she's like, I have one kid who is dressing like everyone else. And then I have the one kid who like does not care, and is wearing the whatever. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting. So I love thinking about our brand. Like, are you just trying to dress like everyone else in your brand? And let's stop for one moment, because when you're speaking to these reps, you're talking about personal branding, right? Like within that company.
Yes, because here's the thing. If they were attracted to Noonday, you have a strong brand. You're not selling snake oil. You are attracting people who believe what you believe. And so their beliefs are aligned with Noonday. Otherwise, why are they working with you? Right? And so this is, I've worked with LuLaRoe. I've worked with Perfectly Posh. Like, I've worked with a lot of different direct sales companies. doTERRA's here in Utah, LipSense, Sungence, lots of distributors here. And I have a lot of these reps come to my workshop. And so what I'm saying is, it can be a personal brand, but it does not have to be a personal brand. You do not have to have your face. You do not have to have your personality. You need to have aspects of you. Because again, Apple is not a personal brand. Apple is not a personal brand, but there are real aspects of the core creative founder and visionary infused into Apple. And it's the same with Nike. A brand is the personification of a business. And if you want to create a real brand, there needs to be some authentic parts of you in the brand. But your face, you don't have to build a brand like me, the Alison Show. So for your consultants, if they're like, well, I want to give advice in styling, and I have a passion for even, let's say, home decor, right? There's a real way to take authentic parts of who they are and what they're interested in and build a business around that, while also the monetization side of the brand is Noonday. Does that make sense?
I think we talk about that in terms of like, what's your why?
Yes.
Because we have people who are hardcore, we want to change the world, we're fair traders. We have people that are like, I just love pretty jewelry. I think it's like,
I just like accessories and styling.
Some people have a passion for adoption and they're like, I want to advocate for adoption. So there it is, like, yeah, you're right. It is finding that why. I think as the owner of the brand, we're always fighting that challenge of like, how do we still keep a strong brand that is consistent while allowing for the authenticity of the representative to completely drive what they're doing. That's always a tension.
Yeah. And so that is what I had to figure out, which is the same thing is, how can it be the Alison Show, but scale, right?
Right.
Because how can it be the Jessica Noonday Show, but scale so that other people can buy in and share their beliefs, but still have themselves being a part of it. Right. And so that's my corporate branding services with that. But on the smaller scale, that, hey, these are all the parts of a brand, and I teach a whole system for it. Here's the parts that I think are important for a brand. Here is how you find your why. That's a big part, is here's how you find your why, because there's a million different ways to do it, but like, here's how we do it. And here's how you infuse it into a social media post. Here's how you infuse it into a Facebook Live. Here's how you infuse it in a team meeting. A lot of times people think, I'm going to build this community and make money. And I don't want to say that you are stupid for thinking that, because of course you are not, but it is not an educated awareness of what having a community and an online following actually is. Having a large Instagram following does not make you money. Having 100,000 followers on Instagram does not mean you have $100,000. In fact, most influencers who have 100,000 followers are not making $100,000. So
that's such an interesting point. This whole Instagram world, like, talk about something that's not real. I don't want to down on Instagram because it does so much good, and it's connection, and it's how we know each other, and it's community. But I just think you bring up a good point, because I think people look at that number and think that's the number of success, when it's like, I mean, maybe it is if you're not wanting to monetize, but if you're wanting to run a business and monetize, like, that is not your data point to look at.
It is either a marketing tool, a tool for connection, or a popularity contest. Learning the principles of good branding will help you grow your Instagram or your social media. But I don't teach things you can Google, is what I like to say, right? If you can Google it, let's not waste our time on it. It doesn't matter if it's a dental practice or a real estate agent or an allergy food blogger or, I had a 60-year-old dirt farmer man at my last workshop. And
that is awesome.
I was freaking out because I was like, why is he here? Like, I'm happy he's here, but I literally started thinking, he's going to think I'm an idiot. Like, he came with his wife. She had her business. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he is going to think I'm such an idiot. Like I'm in fringe pants, air humping in a giant clam. I teach my workshop out of a clam from one of my mermaid parties. And I use a trident to point to the projector. I'm like, this guy, and he was right in front, you know, and I'm all vulnerable because it's my first workshop after being hit by the car. And he loved it. Like by the end, I got him up on stage and made him dance for everyone. Like
that
it was
awesome.
So if Mike can find ways to connect, you can find ways to connect, right? Like there's a way to bring yourself to the table. And again, I don't want to speak in abstracts so that people can't apply this information. I'm all about action. I think the way to apply this information in anything you're doing, a Facebook post, an Instagram post, a marketing email, a team meeting, is you sit down and you ask yourself, would I want to interact with this? So this is just a test I've been doing. Yesterday, I spent like 45 minutes writing an Instagram post. And at the end of it, decided I needed to write this and I liked writing it, but I don't know if Instagram is the place I would want to read this piece of writing. And that's what I said. I'm like, right now I'm in a very active shifting my Instagram strategy. I have some new things I'm going to be working on because what I've done has shifted so much. And it's a hard and kind of humbling place to be in when you're like, I mastered it in this way and now I need to go master it in another way. And it's full circle what we talked about again. But the reason I'm being so transparent about it is because it's this bad habit that we get into where these numbers dictate success for us. I think we do the same thing with the number on the scale. You can have a bad day based on the number that pops up on the scale that morning. And you can have a bad day based on if you got a lot of likes on your last post. And that's when it's too personal. That's when you have not drawn the lines and defined it in a way that you're taking yourself out of it to a healthy degree. And that's what I had to do. And when I did that, then I was able to scale my profits and scale my team. I now have 16 people working the workshop with me, which used to be a workshop that I taught the lecture and then I went around and helped everyone one-on-one. And that it was, again, I was doing the same thing I did with the dance parties. I was making it so it was only me doing everything. And that's not scalable or sustainable. And also other people are better at parts than I am, you know? And so I just don't want people to walk away thinking this just has to do with personal brands, or I have to be like Allison, or I have to be as vulnerable as Jessica and show my face. No. Mike, the farmer, and the dentist I've worked with, you connect in a real way to the work you're doing, and people will connect in a real way to you.
I love that. Okay, so if people are like, yes, that was so helpful, how can we engage in learning more with some of your learning workshops? Where do we find you?
Well, thanks for letting me pimp myself. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I do have a workshop coming up on June 29th, and it's in Utah. And we have AllisonsBrandSchool.com, and that's Allison with one L, AllisonsBrandSchool.com. Or if you just want to go to Allison's Brand School on Instagram, we are so excited to be doing the Instagram account because it's just a place to share free information. If it's not in your budget to pay to come to a workshop right now, we still, like this podcast, like I try to give as much information away for free as I can. You know, I'm not trying to hide anything to upsell you. Some things are better covered in person, and I have intellectual property in the workshop, right? But we are building a community of people who want to do the work they feel called to do, and they're not just there to get a paycheck. And so that's Allison's Brand School on Instagram, or the Alison Show. I'm a good time on Instagram and just talking about how to feel as awesome as you are. And I think I'm going to launch a new website soon, but currently if you go to my website, it's selling Viagra. I got hacked.
That's amazing. Okay. We'll go to the Allison Brand School. I just started following that account. And
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yes. I hope I didn't just talk forever. I did. I talked forever. Thank you for having me.
So you go scared, and that is why we wanted you on. So thank you.
As you heard from Allison's story, she really is right in the middle of the process. I think we can all relate either to that friend or maybe it's us who likes to neatly package our process and then later share about it and say, yeah, last month I was really struggling with fill in the blank, but now I'm okay. I have this happen to me a lot. And sometimes with my friends, I'm like, gosh, I want to walk with you in the messy middle. And so I think Allison is such a great example of practicing vulnerability in the middle of the difficulty. Sometimes life gets radically disrupted. What is your response to disruptions? You can choose to feel trapped. You can choose to feel victimized. You can choose defeat. Or, like Allison, you can let it teach you. You can choose to process alone, or you can invite others in. In the middle of the mess, what does it look like to rise? Speaking of rising, I have created an email tribe. If you don't know about it yet, I would love for you to join my email family. Go to jessicahonegger.com, hit subscribe. I share a lot of behind the scenes. I talk about what it looks like to rise, and I even share some exclusive content that didn't make it into the Going Scared episodes. Go find me on jessicahonegger.com, and I will see you in your inbox in a few. Thanks so much again for joining me on today's podcast, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for joining me on the Going Scared podcast today. If you like what you heard in this episode, be sure and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and leave a review so other people will join the conversation. If you'd like some behind the scenes looks at my life as a CEO, a mom, and a courage catalyzer, be sure to follow along on Facebook and on Instagram at Jessica Honegger, Honegger. Until next time, let's take each other by the hand and keep going scared.